Tell me about Long Walk Out of the Woods.
All right. Long Walk Out of the Woods, which will be the first song on the album and the name of the album, was actually a song that I wrote like 2, 3, actually probably longer at this point. I wrote it before I moved to Arizona, so it was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I actually put it away for a number of years, as you do when you write some songs, and then I came across it, and I don't even remember if I wrote down the chords, but I somehow remembered what it was, which is not often the case with a song you found that was buried. And I started playing through it, and I went, well, I don't know, why did I put this away? And it turned out to be one of my more sort of favorite songs that I had written, and it expressed all the things that I kind of wanted to express both then and when I rediscovered it. And it's basically based off of, I was a big fan of the book Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and let me backtrack by saying that I wrote this song on a pretty rough morning after a long night at the bypass, singing karaoke with the boys, and I woke up not feeling hot, and that feeling that I think everybody gets from time to time when they maybe pushed it a little too far the night before, that maybe I should try turning the ship around a little bit, because it's unsustainable and probably not good for me. And it was in tandem with, I was rereading the book Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and that whole book is all about how she grew up with a great mom, and sort of once she got into her college years, her mom passed away from cancer, I believe. And after her mom passed away, she just started drinking and doing heroin and getting in a really bad way. And eventually she found out she was pregnant, and she didn't know who the dad was. And so, she made a choice about the baby, and she was just in a really bad spot. And sort of in a last ditch effort, she decided, she just happened to see a brochure for hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, which goes from the Mojave Desert all the way up to the border of Canada. And her whole rationale for doing this huge hike was she'd gotten in such a bad way that she was going to hike until she rediscovered the person that her mom always saw her as. And I was, I resonated with that because I was not making some of the best choices. And it was like, I think I don't know, I just related to her so much in that book. And I'd reread it a number of times at that point. And the concept of, it's a long walk out of the woods. It's a long walk out of the woods, and it's the other metaphor I use. It's like turning a big ship. That you can't do it all at once. It takes a long time to make that big swing, and so it's a long walk out of the woods. And hopefully there's people and guidance along the way to help you make it out of there. I don't know where we're going, but we're leaving for good. So that's where that song came from.
So the next song is going to be "It's a Big Ship to Swing Around."
Big Ship to Swing Around is the next one. Well, when we did it when I played it in the Florida Keys, I went with it's a long swim off of the reef. I like to keep it nice and local.
Okay, so tell us more about how you were feeling at the time that you resonated with Wild, but what were your experiences at that time that made you feel like you needed to write these words?
I think the main one was that I wasn't living up to my own sort of standards and expectations. And it's a double-edged sword, because you want to give yourself some grace and understand that you're human and take it easy on yourself once in a while. But on the flip side, there's also a line And they say if you don't cross your own line once in a while, you'll never know if you have one. But I started crossing that line like it was a freeway. So it just got a little out of hand and made some not great choices and paid for a lot of them. And just realized that so much of how I was feeling wasn't due to external circumstances or the fact that, I mean, I don't even know what I was doing at the time, whether I was selling real estate, whether I was farming, but I just had this sort of cloud over me, and realizing that even beyond making not great choices, it was more about the fact that I had a incongruity with sort of my soul, that I knew I wanted to be this kind of person, and I was acting like this kind of person, and that sort of that battle between the two was what was making me feel not great. But realizing that once you get into habits, and that's the thing about habits, is they can be good or bad, but once that ball is rolling, it's a lot harder to slow it down. And I'd gone so far into the woods, to be able to get back out, it was going to be a long walk.
It sounds like that struggle you were facing is kind of a theme throughout the album. How is that why you chose Long Walk Out of the Woods as the title, or the main theme of the album?
Yeah, that I had a different title for the album originally, which was going to be Ghosts Tell Human Stories, which is on the album. But once I kind of put the songs together and realized, because I thought I knew what the theme was, and then as I started putting the songs together and started realizing what the theme was, that kind of jumped out at me. It's like, no, Long Walk Out of the Woods is the song, it's the title, and it expresses, and I think I've said this before, but it expresses that journey that a person makes in their early teens through their 20s, where they, to first become old and wise, you must first be young and dumb. To eventually become old and wise, you must first become young and dumb. And I jumped at that with maybe a little too much enthusiasm. But that's the journey, is not knowing anything. You come from a sort of naivete, a Garden of Eden, where, you're just a kid, and then you enter the wilderness, so to speak, and to quote Captain Ron, if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen out there. And it did. And so it was a process of learning and unlearning and learning and unlearning, and that journey to make it to your 30s, where you start to cut away maybe some of the bad habits and really hard fought and hard won lessons that were acquired through a lot of pain and a lot of hardship and run-ins with the cops. And so Long Walk Out of the Woods felt like the title as soon as I kind of realized it.
The first verse talks about your reflection, about you reflecting. Tell me about that.
The first verse is probably one of the most autobiographical verses I've ever written, which also made it the right song to lead off the album, because the line is, it's the first day of December, so I roll a joint and think about the year. Did I spend days ignoring problems, drinking blindly, running from my fear? Or am I accustomed to just finding the wrong and the right? I do recall, after all, I had a pretty good time. And that 4-line verse encapsulates sort of how I feel on a day-to-day basis, and kind of how I've thought about my life in a lot of ways. Because I do a lot of reflecting, probably too much. But I do ask myself that often, am I ignoring problems? Am I drinking to ignore those problems? Am I running from my fears and not facing them properly? Or is my disposition to, no matter all the good that is going on in my life, and I have a lot of good in my life, is my disposition to needle each situation until I find the one thing that's wrong in all of the good. And I think that there is a big aspect of that, because looking back, I've had a great run of good times and good friends and good family and good girlfriend, and I have so many good things to be thankful for in my life. And yet, why am I trying to find that one wrong thing so I can fix that one thing instead of enjoying and appreciating all the good things that I have? So yeah, that encapsulates it pretty well, and it's something I'm working on. But that also sort of encapsulates the whole album, right? In that verse is, how much am I, and potentially anybody out there who's dealing with the same thing, focusing on the wrong in some sort of weird attempt to fix it by thinking through it, which is sort of never how it works, but just ruminating on it instead of kind of realizing that there's so much good. There's always going to be a little bit of bad. That's the nature of life. So maybe it's time to start focusing on a little bit of that good.
Is that part of being a 4?
I think it's a big part of being a 4. Oh, a 4 Enneagram?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's what makes 4s so able to talk about all the dark things, and to, when somebody comes to them with really heavy feelings, why 4s are able to kind of sit with them and talk that out with them and really empathize in a way that, like, they're able to see. I would say that a 4's skill is whoever they're talking to, especially if they're having trouble. A 4 has a real ability to, like, really see that person, and not only see that person, but go, I've been there too, and know exactly how that, maybe not exactly how they're feeling, but really know how they're feeling, because a 4's been there, and so they know the terrain pretty well. And so I think, yeah.
It gives you good credibility for what you're writing about.
I hope so.
So I listened to Long Walk Out of the Woods again today. Well,
Okay.
I listened to the whole album again. But Long Walk Out of the Woods just jumped out at me again. And I love all the little guitar riffs and the emotion in your voice, especially that one. Tell us about the music part.
The music part, that one, that song moves pretty fast, and there was a lot of space to be able to play little bluegrass type guitar licks, and it's got a real bluegrassy flat picking solo, and that's not originally how I was going to have it go. I mean, the song's still pretty rocked up, but when I first was doing it with a band that I had put together down in Arizona, we really rocked it up, and the drums were really going, and I really like that version too. But when it's that rocked up, it didn't feel some of the earthiness that I think a song, especially with that title, calls for. I think in a lot of ways acoustic instruments just tend to feel a lot more earthy, and so there's a good amount of electric guitar in that song, but it's still primarily an acoustically driven song. And it just allowed for enough subtlety to where the lyrics were able to speak, but still rock pretty hard. And despite all my country and Americana and folky leanings, I'm still a rock and roll guy at heart. So I think we captured that pretty well on that song.